And I was just the airhead who wanted to, pick up chicks. Babes now, man, babes.
She was just 17, swept into stardom on The Partridge Family, and she fell for her co-star. But his reveal nearly tore her world apart. Now, at 72, Susan Dey finally breaks silence, and what she shared is devastating. You're about to uncover the heartbreak, betrayal, and the long-buried truth she kept hidden until now. When The Partridge Family hit television screens in 1970, America saw nothing but harmony, bright costumes, catchy songs, and a wholesome family act. But behind the smiles, something very different was unfolding. Susan Dey, only 17 at the time, was quietly falling for her co-star, David Cassidy. He was the show's heartthrob, adored by millions of fans. But to Susan, he was more than just a co-star. He was the one person she truly wanted. What the cameras never caught was the closeness between them off-set. They spent hours together, rehearsing lines, sharing meals, and talking about the pressures of sudden fame. To Susan, it felt like more than friendship. She held on to the hope that David might see her the same way. For years, she kept those feelings hidden, fearing rejection and the risk of ruining their chemistry on screen. But David knew. He admitted later that he could sense her feelings, even if she never said them outright. The problem was, he didn't feel the same. David Cassidy was living the life of a teen idol. He had groupies at every concert, offers pouring in from everywhere, and a reputation for chasing the spotlight. For him, Susan was a friend, someone safe, someone he respected, but not someone he wanted romantically. The truth came out in 1994 when Cassidy published his memoir, Come On, Get Happy, Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus. In the book, he revealed Susan's crush in shocking detail, even describing why he couldn't return her affection. Fans were stunned. For over 2 decades, Susan had never spoken about her feelings, never shared the heartbreak. And suddenly, the man she once trusted exposed it to the entire world. Imagine the betrayal. A private pain, hidden for years, thrown into tabloids and bookstores without her consent. While David's words were laced with humor and regret, Susan's silence spoke louder. She never commented publicly, never attended reunions, and never forgave him for putting her heartache on display. And here's where it gets even more complicated, because this heartbreak wasn't the only battle Susan was facing during her years in the spotlight. Something darker was already consuming her life, something that not even her closest friends could see. What Susan endured behind closed doors went far beyond unrequited love, and when it surfaced, it nearly destroyed her. While fans adored the sunny, perfect image of Laurie Partridge on screen, Susan Dey's reality was far more fragile. Fame had crashed into her life almost overnight. She was a teenager, suddenly thrust into the center of one of America's most beloved shows, and the pressure to look flawless became suffocating. Underneath the bright lights and perfect hair, she was crumbling. Susan developed a painful eating disorder during her time on The Partridge Family. She was desperate to meet the industry's impossible standards of beauty, and as the attention on her grew, so did her struggle. At the time, very few people spoke openly about disorders like anorexia. It was hidden, shameful, and left her feeling isolated. Co-stars, fans, and even close friends had no idea of the extent of her suffering. She learned how to smile through it, to hide the truth, even while her health was deteriorating. But if her disorder wasn't enough, the media soon made things even worse. Tabloids stalked her every move, waiting to pounce on any slip-up or scandal. In one of the most shocking invasions of privacy, a reporter actually infiltrated her Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Imagine the betrayal. Susan seeking a safe space to heal, only to discover that someone sitting in the same circle was secretly taking notes for a story. That violation left scars that never healed. It confirmed her worst fear. In Hollywood, she couldn't trust anyone. The pressure of perfection, combined with betrayal from people who were supposed to be allies, hardened her view of fame. What fans saw as glamorous, Susan experienced as a relentless assault on her privacy and sanity. She kept retreating further inward, finding ways to protect herself from an industry that had already taken too much. Meanwhile, David Cassidy was thriving as a teen idol, traveling the world and enjoying the benefits of superstardom. Susan, on the other hand, was locked in a quiet war with herself. Their lives, so intertwined on screen, were drifting in opposite directions behind the curtain. The world had no idea what she was carrying while filming those cheerful episodes, and yet, even as she fought her hidden battles, another blow was waiting. David Cassidy would one day reveal something that exposed Susan's most private pain to the public. And once it was out there, nothing could undo the damage. In 1994, David Cassidy stunned fans with his tell-all memoir, Come On, Get Happy, Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus. Buried within its pages was a revelation that felt like a dagger straight to Susan Day's heart. Cassidy detailed how Susan had once fallen for him during the height of their time together on the Partridge Family. He admitted he knew about her feelings, but in his words, he could never see her in that way. To casual readers, it might have seemed like harmless honesty, but to those who knew Susan, it was an unforgivable betrayal. For decades, she had stayed quiet, never admitting what she had endured emotionally. She carried herself with dignity, never confirming or denying rumors of a romance with Cassidy. And then suddenly, it was laid bare for the world, packaged as entertainment in a best-selling book. Cassidy didn't stop at simply revealing her secret. He described the reasons why he rejected her, going so far as to explain that their chemistry was purely on screen. He claimed he cared for her as a friend, but never wanted her in a deeper way. To readers, it sounded light-hearted, even playful, but for Susan, it was devastating. Imagine the humiliation, your most private emotions, not just exposed, but dissected publicly by the very person you once trusted. Her response was silence, but her actions spoke volumes. Susan began distancing herself from anything connected to the Partridge family. While cast reunions became popular over the years, she never once showed up. She declined interviews that focused on the show, and she flatly refused to be part of nostalgia specials celebrating the era. When asked why, she gave no comment. Insiders believed her resentment toward Cassidy was the reason she cut ties completely. David, for his part, would later express regret. He admitted in interviews that maybe he shouldn't have been so open about Susan's feelings, but by then, the damage was done. His confession had already cast a long shadow over their relationship, turning what might have been a private chapter into a permanent headline. Fans noticed. Whenever the cast reunited, Susan's absence became a louder statement than words ever could. It was a quiet protest, a refusal to let Hollywood parade her heartbreak for ratings. She had drawn a line, and crossing it meant losing one of her closest connections forever. But why did Susan remain so silent for so many years? Why let others tell her story without ever defending herself? That's where her life took a much deeper, more mysterious turn. Because the reasons she waited until her 70s to finally speak out revealed just how much pain she had been carrying all along. For decades, Susan Day's silence became as much a mystery as her story itself. Fans speculated, reporters pried, and even fellow cast members wondered why she refused to speak out about her time with David Cassidy. The truth is, silence was her shield. After being burned by tabloids, betrayed by Cassidy's memoir, and exposed in her most private struggles, Susan chose withdrawal over confrontation. She turned her back on Hollywood almost completely. While her career stretched into the 1980s with a celebrated role on LA Law, by the late 1990s, she had walked away from the industry. No more television spots, no reunion specials, no interviews about the good old days. To Susan, talking about the Partridge family meant reopening wounds that had never healed. So instead, she lived quietly, away from the glare of Hollywood, building a family life in upstate New York with her husband. But why wait until her 70s to finally break the silence? The answer lies in time. and perspective. Susan had spent much of her adulthood carrying resentment, not just toward David Cassidy, but toward an industry that had chewed her up and spat her out. With David's passing in 2017, the chance for reconciliation was gone. Yet his death also freed her from the fear of confrontation. She no longer had to worry about how he would react to her words or how the media would pit them against each other. There's also a deeper layer: healing. Many who struggle with disorders, betrayal, and heartbreak need decades before they can face those scars publicly. Susan was no different. By the time she reached 72, she had lived long enough to see her story rewritten by others again and again. Fans believed she had been bitter, aloof, or cold. She wanted the record corrected. She wanted people to know the truth, not filtered through Cassidy's book or the tabloids, but in her own voice. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about stirring drama. It was about finally unburdening herself of something she had carried for 50 years. The silence, once her protection, had become her prison. At 72, Susan realized she didn't want to leave the world with her story untold. And when she finally spoke, what she revealed shocked even those who thought they knew every detail of the saga. It wasn't just about unrequited love. It was about the devastating reality she had lived with ever since. When Susan Day finally opened up at 72, the weight of half a century of silence poured out. People expected bitterness or scandal, but what she revealed was something much deeper and far more heartbreaking. Susan admitted that her love for David Cassidy had shaped much of her early life, not in a romantic fairy tale way, but in a way that left scars. She revealed that the rejection wasn't what broke her. It was the way it was exposed to the world without her consent. She explained how reading Cassidy's memoir in the mid-1990s felt like a betrayal she could never recover from. Not because she was ashamed of having loved him, but because he turned something deeply personal into entertainment for strangers. That single moment, she admitted, was the reason she walked away from the Partridge family reunions forever. Every invitation was a reminder of that book, of that exposure, of that wound. But there was more. Susan revealed that her silence wasn't just about David. It was about survival. She confessed that at the height of her struggles, when tabloids had infiltrated her AA meetings and fans saw her only as the perfect Laurie Partridge, she felt utterly alone. She had no one she trusted fully, no one she could turn to without fear of exploitation. She admitted that for years she carried thoughts she never dared share, thoughts of whether she could keep going under the crushing weight of fame and betrayal. The devastating truth wasn't simply that she loved David Cassidy and was rejected. It was that the entire experience nearly broke her spirit. She carried the pain of unrequited love, the humiliation of public exposure, and the loneliness of being unable to trust anyone in her orbit. To the outside world, Susan Day looked like the girl who had it all. Behind closed doors, she was barely holding herself together. When she revealed all of this at 72, fans were stunned. It wasn't the scandal they expected. It was a confession of how much pain she had hidden, how much damage the fame machine had done, and how one man's careless words had echoed in her life for decades. Her truth wasn't about revenge, and it wasn't about shaming Cassidy. It was about finally being heard, finally speaking in her own words before it was too late. And yet, her reveal raised another haunting question. How many others from that golden age of television carried the same hidden wounds, smiling on screen while breaking inside? Susan's story was personal, but it pointed to a much bigger tragedy that Hollywood never wanted anyone to see. To the outside world, the Partridge family was a dream. Fame, money, millions of fans screaming their names. But for those living inside it, stardom carried a price far higher than anyone imagined. Susan Day's story was just one example of how fame at a young age can twist reality, distort relationships, and leave behind scars that never fade. The pressure wasn't just about looking good on camera. It was about perfection, never aging, never slipping, never revealing weakness. Susan's eating disorder and her struggles with privacy were symptoms of a much bigger disease: Hollywood's relentless machine. Every actor on that show, especially the younger ones, felt it. But Susan carried the added weight of being tied emotionally to someone whose career revolved around adoration from strangers. David Cassidy was the ultimate teen idol. He lived for the stage, for the rush of attention, for the endless applause. That kind of lifestyle didn't leave room for someone like Susan, who craved genuine connection. Stardom magnified their differences. For David, relationships were temporary distractions. For Susan, they were the only real thing she could hold on to. The imbalance left her isolated, even when she was surrounded by castmates and cameras. And the hidden costs didn't stop there. Privacy became a myth. Susan's struggles with tabloids proved how ruthless the industry could be. Fans thought they owned a piece of her life just because she appeared in their living rooms once a week. Reporters crossed lines, friends betrayed confidences, and Hollywood executives treated her like a product instead of a person. Every smile on screen came at the expense of something off-screen, whether it was her health, her trust, or her happiness. Looking back now, Susan has spoken about how damaging that environment was. Fame, she explained, doesn't just elevate you, it traps you. It magnifies your heartbreaks, your mistakes, your secrets, and turns them into headlines. And once it's out there, there's no taking it back. This is why her eventual reveal about David Cassidy carried so much weight. It wasn't just about him. It was about everything that fame had cost her, about the life she might have lived if she hadn't been thrust into the spotlight as a teenager. Her confession at 72 wasn't only personal, it was a warning. Stardom looks beautiful from the outside, but behind the glitter is a graveyard of broken trust, shattered dreams, and private battles the audience never sees. And when Susan finally laid it all bare, the world reacted. Fans who once adored the perfect Laurie Partridge were forced to confront the pain of the woman who played her. Some were shocked, some sympathetic, and some angry that the truth had been hidden for so long. But no matter the reaction, one thing was certain: the silence was broken, and nothing would ever look the same again. When Susan Day finally let the truth spill after more than 50 years, the reaction was electric. Fans who had grown up idolizing the Partridge family couldn't believe what they were hearing. The perfect Laurie Partridge, the smiling teenager who embodied innocence and harmony, was suddenly revealed as a woman who had endured heartbreak, humiliation, and years of private suffering. It shattered the illusion, and for many, it made them see the show in a completely new light. Social media lit up with debates. Some fans rushed to defend David Cassidy, pointing out his later struggles with alcohol, dementia, and his own regrets about fame. Others argued that Susan had every right to finally speak, that her silence for so long had been an act of survival, and that her voice deserved to be heard without judgment. Clips of old Partridge family episodes resurfaced online, fans rewatching them with fresh eyes, searching for cracks in the smiles, moments where maybe Susan's pain had slipped through the mask. The entertainment press devoured the story. Headlines framed it as Susan's revenge, but those who listened carefully knew it wasn't about vengeance. It was about closure. She hadn't come forward to smear David's memory. She had come forward to reclaim her own. After decades of silence, she refused to let her story be told only by tabloids or the pages of a memoir she never consented to. Her reveal also reignited discussions about the darker side of fame. The pressure placed on child and teen stars, the lack of mental health support in Hollywood, and the toxic culture of the 1970s entertainment industry all came under scrutiny again. Susan's story became part of a larger movement, one that forced people to ask how many other stars had carried scars we never knew about. And yet, the most striking part of her revelation was how many people felt personally connected to it. Fans who had lived through heartbreak of their own, who had experienced betrayal, who had fought private battles in silence, suddenly saw themselves in Susan Day. Her vulnerability turned her from an untouchable TV icon into something more real, someone human. At 72, Susan Dey reminded the world that behind every smiling face on screen, there's a story we don't see. And sometimes, that story is more devastating, more powerful, and more unforgettable than anything a script could ever write.